What's up, Tottenham fans? We are back with another episode of Tottenham Talk. Your two favorite anchors, Clay Troyer and Matt Kuster, coming back at you with another weekly roundup episode, talking about, Clay, what was the team that we played again in Portugal?
We got a lot to talk about today, Matt. We're going to start off with the Europa Conference League loss to Paços Ferreira. Talk about the Tanguy news because, there's a lot going on in there. Pape Sarr looks like it might be a new signing for us. And then also finish it out with the Wolves game and a little bit more Harry Kane drama. Perhaps it's taking a turn for the better. We'll see. So
sounds like this week has a lot of important topics, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of why we're doing these weekly roundups, so we can kind of just get everything in at once and see where it goes. So Paços Ferreira, let's start with this one because I think this is important to note because you look at the starting 11, right? You do have Lo Celso and Winks, two senior players and Romero, who should be, and Galini, so a lot of really good players. A lot of people, including myself, kind of excuse this game as well. It's mostly our youngsters, and it's mostly, the youth squad he's trying to get minutes in. So yeah, we lost, but first of all, we got to know who Paços Ferreira is, right? They're in the Portuguese league. They're not a terrible team. I mean, they're pretty good for the Portuguese league. I think they're fourth right now. And yes, we are playing our youngsters. You got Dane Scarlett up top, but my issue comes in where, you got to have players like Lo Celso. Well, first of all, he didn't even put any of our big shots on the bench. There was no Son, no Son, no Kane, that type of thing on the bench where you sub someone in if we do go down 1-0. We only had essentially teenagers as subs. And I really like that because it didn't give our team, Winks, Lo Celso, Romero, Galini, you could say that maybe the more senior members of that squad, the opportunity to make an excuse, right? Like you couldn't just make an excuse and say, oh, well, if things go wrong, we can rely on Son coming in, or we can rely on Harry Kane coming in. Well, no, You guys got to figure it out, And I think that was kind of a test from Nuno. And I really like that, and I'm even okay with the result being the way it was because there is a second leg at home. And it's really cool to see how Nuno is putting faith in these players, but also kind of trying to instill that confidence. However, they didn't really come up to the task, right? You look at Lo Celso and Winks, they did not play their best soccer, their best football. Winks, we all know Winks is not the best player in general, and he's not doing so hot with us recently, but he's got to really take advantage of those opportunities, like that is where he has to shine. And that's where Lo Celso has to shine, because I think Lo Celso can be an integral part, especially if we don't bring in any more attacking midfielders or attacking central players like Lo Celso, to fill in that Eriksen role. It's going to be tough. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, kind of that that way of thinking about it.
It is very hard, in Nuno's position to have, the best 11 every time. And, when you have, all these youngsters that we signed, like with Brian Hill, if you want to pronounce his name like that, Brian Hill. He stood out to me against Paços Ferreira because he started in that 10 spot, that middle cam. And then, obviously Dane Scarlett up top. And at first I was like, okay, this is something I feel like Jose would have done in terms of like putting out my youngsters. Let's let the other guys rest. And as you saw against Wolves, the lineup against Wolves was the same lineup against City. And so you're thinking, okay, well, I don't want there to be kind of a team, and then here's the B team.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And so I want to go into every game thinking that, these guys can easily beat us, and Paços did. And it sucks because, now we have a bigger game ahead of in our hands when we play them back at home. But I don't want Nuno to be playing these guys and end up kind of disturbing the fluidity of, the chemistry with some players. You know what I mean? What's very interesting, though, is he tweeted and he said, after they lost, he goes, I would do it again.
Yeah, totally.
And I was looking into that, reading about it, and it was super interesting that one thing I love about Nuno is how confident and um, strong he is behind his values, and he's talked about. I mean, many different things. I know we'll get into like the Ndombele for an example, but uh, with Pacos, and he said, I played that same starting 11 again, and despite how poorly we played, you gotta take what he's saying under consideration. And it can be like, okay, listen, maybe he's got something in mind here. Maybe what we're trying to do is, in the works, in the pro is, progressing. It's not just going to be like, perfect 5-0 win, with these guys. Um, but it's also has a lot of positives. And one main one I'd say would be giving these youngsters and Christian Romero, another good example, time to kind of adjust to playing with other Premier League teammates. This is not something that these players have done before, and the style of play could be completely different. But
It's like
super,
it
go
should be.
ahead.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying about you don't want to disrupt the fluidity, which I feel like that Paco's loss kind of disrupted our momentum going into this game on Sunday.
I completely agree.
Like we'll talk about the Wolves game and what went wrong there, but it's almost it. But also you got to see like where else are we going to play these players, right? We buy the likes of Brian Hill, potentially Pape Sarr, like we're going to talk about, young players like this, or Romero too, who's still young, but he's trying to get integrated into the squad and into playing in England. And why can they not just get the job done? Because if they win that convincingly, and if Lo Celso and Winks have better games and they kind of put the team on their backs and take that leadership role, which I think Nuno is trying to force them into.
Yep.
I think it's a totally different story, and we maybe win this game on Sunday that we just played 2-3 goals.
Yeah.
And
don't get me wrong. I think having like your kind of backups like against Pacos, say we did well, say we won the game 3-0, and Dane Scarlett had a goal, and everyone played well. We played well. Obviously there's more confidence with the fans and then with the players going into this game. And I do believe, and I do 100% agree with what you said about how that game and our loss affected how we played today. Luckily, we still got the job done, but we cannot have that happen when we play against bigger teams like Chelsea, even Arsenal. Despite the fact they've lost maybe a couple times, but it's United. These teams that are the powerhouses. It's so difficult because being a Champions League team a couple years ago, playing against some of the best teams, kept us with the level of competition when it came to the Premier League.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Playing a Juventus midweek and then going around and go playing Crystal Palace is so much better to me than playing Pacos and then turning it around and playing United or a Wolves. The style of play and the level of competition is so different to where these players have to adjust. And in addition to that, well, who's playing against Pacos that's also playing against Wolves? Well, no one is. So, I think the chemistry.
Well, so here's a point on that, because I think what Nuno's trying to do, right, is like I said, he's trying to get Lo Celso and Winks, those types of players, Romero, Galini, to take up that leadership role, right? Because if you look at it, you look at our unused substitutes for today's game. It was Galini, Doherty, Davies, Gill, Sessegnon, and Scarlett, all of which started against Pacos, right?
Yeah.
And
damn, dude, that's a decent freaking lineup on a bench.
And you look at used substitutes. We used Lo Celso, Kane, and Winks. Obviously, Kane didn't feature against Pacos, but both Winks and Lo Celso did. So
let me look this up.
You got to get these players. So there's no substitute for first team football, right? You can train as much as you want. You can scrimmage 11v11 if you want, but there's no substitute for first team football. And when you look at players like Brian Hill, Sessegnon, Scarlett, Galini, maybe even the younger players who would need to be integrated into the squad ASAP because we didn't have a full preseason with them. You got to be able to put this on their back. And I like that Nuno's, he's not afraid to say what he thinks, right? And this is obviously the way he's going about it. This is his mindset. these players have to be able to come in clutch here because against a team like Pacos Ferreira, because when we need them in the Premier League on the weekend, they're going to have to be there, And if we don't
Yeah.
have them opportunity to give them that leadership role, it's like Oliver Skip, right? So you send him off on loan to Norwich. He
Yeah.
becomes this leader in the midfield, this, filled with confidence. And like we said last week, he comes into the Man City game and he's not hesitant. He's not, timid at all. He's going straight into it, going hard and playing really well. And that's the same way with Wolves. And, that's what you need, right? If Skip was to just ride the bench all last season and maybe get some minutes here and there with Spurs, that's a totally different story than, right now.
Can I chime in real quick?
Yeah.
I just wrote this down. You know what's super interesting, and this has been a common theme now under Nuno, and I think Jose kind of sparked it. So I'll give Jose a little credit on that. But you see now we've got Dane Scarlett, Hill on the bench, and then Skip starting, looking at also Pape Sarr. All those guys, well, maybe besides Skip, are 20 and younger.
And Skip's 21, is he not?
Is Skip 21? Okay. Point being, young. Majority of those guys are teens. Well, I think Hill's 20 flat.
Skip's actually only 20.
20. Okay, so Brian Hill and Skip are both 20. Dane Scarlett is like 16 or 17. 17, I think.
17, yep.
And then
Sessegnon's 21.
So you look at this, and for me, and then the Pape Sarr guy, who's I think he's 18.
Yeah.
I think we are doing a lot with our youth group. We're actually utilizing our youth squad, and we've seen this too in preseason with some Niall St. John, maybe I think his name.
No, just Niall John, yeah.
Niall John. But my point is, we are now seeing Dane Scarlett always in the list, whether it's Premier League or he's starting in Conference
League, right?
And this is super interesting because Nuno back at Wolves, signed Fabio Silva, who was 17 years old, coming from Sporting, or I forget where he went from Portugal, but a $50 million signing for him. And I think Nuno and Patricia have a part in this. Same with Daniel Levy, but I think Jose sparked it, is utilizing our youth players because of what we have produced, aka Harry Kane. Some of these guys that have came from the bottom of the ranks, now work their way up. When's the last time the last player that has made a senior debut that came from a youth academy was Harry Winks?
Yeah.
And
Tanganga, besides Tanganga.
Tanganga, okay, that counts too.
He's a good example, though. He's a
great example. But point is we have such a damn good youth squad and youth academy that I think we've kind of now transitioned a lot into, hey guys, let's kind of utilize these two, as well as still buying some, major transfers. But I mean, you look at Arsenal, you got Emile Smith-Rowe coming out, and he's been killing it for them, especially last season. And yes, I know it's Arsenal, but point is, I think he's like 19 or 20, I think he's 20. But, utilizing these, youth academies can go a long way. And I think it's so interesting seeing how we've got so many young guys in the senior squad against some of the big teams we're playing. I mean, you look at, I think Dane Scarlett was on the bench against City. And this is a very common theme going into this year under Nuno.
Right, and that's what gets me excited. You look at the Conference League. Do we want to go off and win the Conference League? Of course, right? Of course. It's a trophy. Maybe we'll get bantered because it's not a real trophy. Who knows? But of course we want to win it. But I don't know, and this might be a tough take, but I don't know if this is a priority to win it. You know what I mean? Right now we're in the middle of a rebuild, and we are rebuilding around a couple of players. You got Hugo up, a leader in the back, obviously our captain. You've got Højbjerg in the midfield. You've got Son, and we'll see if Harry Kane stays or not. But we're building around those players, and I think we're doing a good job. Like you said, we're looking at these youth, we're looking at players that we can develop over time, and I think we have a really unique opportunity with the Conference League to throw them in. You can train as much as you want on the training pitch, right? You can do drills, get better here, go to the gym, whatever it is. But there's nothing that substitutes that, like actually playing in some sort of competition, right? First team football. And if you look at the Pacos Ferreira game and maybe more games in the Conference League like this is where, if we're using Dane Scarlett as a sub, he's got to be able to be a sub, It's not like, we got to be able to
Yeah.
call on his name when we need him, right? And the only way that we're going to get him like that is to not only instill the confidence in him, but let him run and let him play, 90 minutes a game, 80 minutes a game, not 5 minutes here and there. It's the skip effect, like I said, with Norwich. And I think the Conference League is almost that little level down so they can get, 90 minutes, even if, our team loses, right? There's a big picture here. And I think this will affect our Premier League, Carabao, FA Cup, maybe those domestic titles a little bit more. And that might be even more beneficial for us going long term, as opposed to, trying to find the best 11 every time. And which I think is what Jose did. The only time I can think of Jose when he really played youngsters was that team. I can't remember their name. I think it was the Carabao Cup. And it was like a Division 6 team, right?
Marine.
Yeah, FC Marine. And, he played some youngsters there. But even then, he still played the likes of Delhi, Bale, those guys. So this is really Nuno saying, look, we think you're good enough to be on this team. We think you're good enough to be in the squad. So now you have to prove it. And we have faith in you. Everyone's behind you, but you gotta show up, because that's what it's going to take to make it in the Premier League. And I love it. And we can be upset because we lost that game, but that's one game in the grand scheme of trying to rebuild Tottenham back to where Poch had us, And I think Nuno's on the right track with doing this. And if I was Nuno, I'd throw the same team at him at home. So that's my next question. Next question as we kind of wrap up the Pacos news. We have another leg this week. Super important. We're knocked out if it's done. Done with Conference League. So do you throw in the same team, same subs, or do you throw in the same team, same starters? Maybe you have, Son and Kane on the bench just in case. What do you do there?
I definitely think if you put the same squad in, you are giving a statement to the players who are playing and to the people who aren't playing. I think it shows a lot of courage from Nuno if he did that. A lot of bravery too. But at the same time, I think it shows reliability on his decisions.
It'll be interesting. Go ahead.
No, I think I really think it would give a statement. I don't know how many fans would agree with it. Personally, I would do something to where I would just call it. Don't even risk, losing the game. But part of me, honestly, this is a hot take, I'm sure. But part of me is not mad if we did get knocked out, because in this rebuild, if we just strictly focused on Premier League football to try to get top 4, and didn't have this at all, okay, I want to be as opposed, to be honest with you, because I still think we have some stuff to figure out. But I think these conference games should be games for quote unquote the B team,
Right.
or these substitutes and these young guys to kind of get some playing time. Because you've got a lot of those guys on the bench, like Sessegnon is a great example, who performed phenomenally
when he was on loan.
And so, like, theoretically, you think, okay, well, we should be winning this game with the squad I put out there. And yes, at home, it could be different. It will be different. And I think the same squad you put in would get the job done. Maybe put a couple people on the bench that are reliable to put in the 50s, 60s minutes if you need to. But I think it's more of a kind of team and league to kind of get the young guys in, maybe test a couple new things out, but mainly focus on Premier League football, because I think we currently maybe not deserve Champions League, but in the near future, yes, we are a Champions League team.
We're Champions League club,
Champions League club, yeah, I 100%. But we have to show that, and obviously we haven't showed that yet.
Yeah. So my take on this is I really want Nuno to stick with the exact same squad, because so much of this game, so much of professional athletics is mentality, right? You got to think, how do you get to the right mentality where when things go wrong, you can push through it? And if you look at the starting lineup from Pape Sarr, it's not a bad lineup. Are we young? Yes, we're very, very young, especially in our subs. You got Dane Scarlett, Brian Hill, Harry Winks, Lo Celso, Sessegnon, Davies, Niall John, Christian Romero, Cameron Carter-Vickers, and Matt Doherty, and then Galini in goal. And it's like, that team is good. That team is capable
I would say
of,
the team's not a bad team at all.
no, and has holes, don't get me wrong, but you got to look at that squad and throw them into it, because if they get the opportunity again and there's no Son or Kane on the bench, they're like, they can't look around for someone else to solve the problems for them, right? They got to solve the problems themselves and essentially put the team on their back and say, hey, look, coach believes in us, the manager believes in us, we got to put this together, right? And that's when you see the true character of some players like Lo Celso, who, if he's able to, I really want him to become a leader in that role, because he can be like, if he can be a leader and help win that game next Thursday, then his confidence could skyrocket. And next thing you know, he becomes a crucial first team player for Premier League games, like we've wanted him to for so long.
Do you remember? Like, I think maybe it was last year's window. We were talking about getting that South Korean center back.
Yeah, Kim Min Jae.
And we talked about how, oh my God, that'd be perfect. We can get this guy or a couple of these players, and they can kind of work their way into the squad by playing these kind of conference games. Blah blah blah. Well, I think that's what kind of Nuno's doing too with some of the new guys.
Yeah, but he's committing to it. Like Jose didn't quite commit to it. Jose always had a backup plan.
And I think, I really think these signings that we've had, I don't think we're done either. Obviously, Pape Sarr is, I think, coming. But we'll talk about him in a second, because there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about him too. But what I was going to say was, it seems to me like we genuinely have people in big authority positions who truly want to rebuild and believe in the guys that we've signed. Patrici, Daniel Levy, I think, has been on board with this now, kind of with Patrici getting in there, and then with Nuno, and how big I just think there's been such a big transformation behind the team in terms of behind the soccer part, with the director of football and kind of just not replacing Hitchen, but in a way we've kind of seen more now with Patrici, with all these fab tweets, and we've never seen anything with Hitchen ever,
Yeah.
And so I think there's so much going on the back end of this, which is causing Nuno to be like, okay, I believe in what I can do. And if you guys can believe in me, we're on the same page. I think it's definitely played a big part, and I think we've seen it. And I think that's why we're 2-0 in the Premier League right now. I genuinely do.
Yeah. So
I don't – go ahead. You're good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That kind of brings us into what we can talk a little bit about Tanguy when we talk about Nuno. And like I said, I've really been impressed with Nuno because he has a system and he knows the way he wants to do things. And he's not going to waver one way or the other to try and please Daniel Levy, to try and please Partici. He says, look, this is how I do things, and this is how I want to do this, and that's probably part of why he took the job, because he was going to be allowed to do that. You look at some managers probably that don't have that identity. I think Solskjaer might be one of them, in all honesty, where they don't really have that identity, and you're like, okay, yes, he's doing a good rebuild maybe, but I just don't know what's going on. Like, they just drew to Southampton today. And Nuno here is doing a great job at sticking true to his word and not wavering. He has the best answers of any manager, I think, in press conferences, because it's so honest. It's not some pre-written script that his team has told him to say. If you get this question, it's like, look, this is how I do things, And like when he was asked about Tanguy, we'll move into Tanguy now. When he was asked about Tanguy for the weekend, he said, I can be completely honest with you. Tanguy will not be involved on Sunday. And he's like, that's it. I'm the coach. I got to make these choices.
Then he goes on to say, I cannot convince players to play for Tottenham. I only prepare them to play for Tottenham.
Correct. That's not his job. And he knows that, I think a lot of players, a lot of people, especially maybe Jose, who have this preconceived idea of what Tottenham was, especially when you're at Chelsea. It's like, oh, Tottenham's a lower level club, blah, blah, blah. Well, he finds himself there later in his career, and, he's maybe trying to convince players to come there for him, not for Tottenham, and that's huge. I think that is huge. So
I
I'm
think
really
it's
happy with Nuno.
also, I think because then he went on to say, you come here and you wear that, you wear that crest on your chest, and if you come for money, it's a waste of time or something like that.
Yeah,
Um, which is there's so much truth behind that statement, and
totally.
it just shows so much of what Nuno's about. And I think it's kind of proven to Spurs fans who were ever questioning him when picked him up as manager, what he can do.
Totally. So
But no, if you go into Ndombele, who I have currently on, which is kind of sad.
yeah,
Here, I'll
given the
show you
current news, it's a little sad.
get a little proof. See, proof. Um, but anyways,
Yeah,
I
so
think
let's talk about him, right?
I
There's
think
been
I think this is a good topic because he's been MIA for the last couple weeks. Not even in conference league games.
right.
And it's a very, very hot topic because he's been probably one of the biggest signings we've had.
He is our biggest in terms of
Is he
money
our biggest
value.
signing?
Yeah.
So it looks like to me we gotta let him go.
Well, so that's the thing, right? Is the last couple of years, ever since he joined, really, it's every transfer has been like, hey, Tanguy might be looking to leave. Tanguy might be looking to do this, and that's now 3 managers, 4 tech if you count Ryan Mason. But so you got Poch, who didn't play him all that much. I guess Poch kind of did play him a little bit, but he didn't get much time with him. Let's take Poch out of it. You got Jose, who didn't really favor him that much. Ryan Mason didn't favor him that much, and now Nuno. So
Jose played the most, I think.
he played him the most, but even then, like towards the end of Jose's reign, he still was not playing that much, and he was not playing 90 minutes. And we saw that. So there's something behind the scenes there with mentality. And Jose said, there's been quotes, I think he's something along the lines of, I think Tanguy is one of the most skilled players I've ever had, but he's just not there, committed, that mentally, that little aspect, that last piece of the puzzle is not there.
Why though? Why do you think that?
Well, there's
I
a
have
lot
an
of
answer.
things,
I wanna
right?
know
So
why
he's
you think
French.
that.
He's French. He doesn't speak the best English. He moved from France, probably a very comfortable place, comfortable language, to come to this new place that he came at a terrible time too. If you look at it, he right when he got here, a couple months later, we have a worst start to the Premier League in a long time. Poch is sacked. Jose comes in, big character. Now he has to prove himself. Doesn't really know what this, no identity for the club, no identity for Tanguy maybe. It's hard for him to work while he's also trying to keep in mind, he's also adjusting to a new country, a new language, a new style of play, the Premier League. The Premier League alone is enough to adjust to. So then you bring it down. Okay, well now with Jose, all this drama is going on. What's going on here? Blah, blah, blah. Then you got Ryan Mason, and now you got this summer, and now Harry Kane might leave. There's so much going on, and now it's like, well, hold up. This might not be the Champions League winning team that I was promised when I signed, and maybe that type of mentality is what's holding him back. And so my question is, what do you think is going on behind the scenes with Tanguy? Because me and you, we love Tanguy. Last year, we thought it was going to be his year, and in a way, it kind of was. But I saw something recently where we're twice as likely to win games when Tanguy hasn't featured in the squad. So I don't know what that means, and it might not correlate exactly like, oh, Tanguy's so bad that he makes us lose games, but it's more like there's some, we talk a lot about Nuno, right? He sticks to his guns. He has a clear plan. So what does Tanguy have to be doing that he's not even getting a chance with Nuno right here?
Well, I think also Nuno plays a 2-man midfield. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like. Well,
That's 3 though.
Three. He did, 4-3-3. You're right. 3-man midfield. I'm gonna put it in simple terms here. I just don't think he's as hard of a worker as anyone else is. And it shows. I mean, he's
Totally.
you see Dele. I think that's one of the reasons why Dele started every Premier League game. Is because
Totally.
his defensive work rate is unmatchable, and that's something that you have to value so much, especially when you're up 1-0 and you have to try your best just to seal the game. And you can't, afford having somebody up there in the attack and just kind of lollygagging back. Even not necessarily lollygagging back, but say you are dropped and you're top of the box and the ball's maybe 5 feet away, but if you're kind of lollygagging to it, kind of putting your foot in front of it, trying to stop instead of going into that ball to make sure they don't shoot it, the difference into that and the difference of level of intensity. I think Tanguy, that's what he lacks. He's
Totally agree.
phenomenal on the ball. He's not the best off the ball, but I think he could be that much better, and he could play more if he had a better work rate. To me, I think coming in, he had kind of a idea that he was, this all-time big signing for us. He's going to start every game.
He's the man. Yeah,
He's
totally.
the man, blah, blah. And then when things kind of didn't work out, he was kind of like, what's going on here? Why am I not playing?
Maybe a little bit of entitlement, you think?
Maybe a little bit. I think a loan spell might not be bad for him, but if we were to let him go, it's going to be a very, very tough decision on who we, what we get for him or whatnot. But
so let's go into that.
The main thing he lacks is just his work rate. I mean, he's phenomenal with. I remember the ball against City when we beat City last year in the first. What you call it? Ooh, my battery's running low. And like that ball to Son, and Son finished it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, we know he can play. Sheffield United's goal was kind of lucky, I think, but at the same time, really nice. We know he's good enough to play, but I think a lot of it is here, and then his overall work rate, his defensive work rate. I mean, he's not gonna see the field much if he doesn't. I want to say track back, because that's not necessarily why he's not playing. But if you look at Skip, Højbjerg, and Dele, I think him and Dele are kind of very similar players. But I take Dele 10 out of 10 times because of his defensive work rate. And
yeah, so it's also like
that thing he lacks.
Yeah, and I'll agree with almost everything you said. But I'll kind of add on, like, I don't think he might not be buying into Nuno's project either. If Nuno sets out a clear plan for the team, it looks like most, if not all of the players are buying into what he has to offer to, kind of structure this rebuild. But Tanguy's not buying into that, then Nuno can't play him no matter how skilled he is, because you got to have 100% buy-in to have that successful team, that winning team, winners win.
Another thing too, I would say, is we have so much depth in midfield, I think. With Winks, we have, even though I'm surprised that a lot of these players haven't offloaded in a while or yet, but it's very interesting how we're looking at getting, Pape Sarr, which I think is the next topic we should talk about.
Totally.
Being a midfielder, being a young midfielder. I know there's speculation that we might keep him on loan at Mets for a year, but we did buy him or might buy him soon. But it's interesting why we are looking at players like this when we already do have players, aka Ndombele, Winks, Lo Celso, Skip, Højbjerg, Dele, all those midfielders I just named right off the top of my head. I know there's more. And so in that 6 guys I named, Ndombele should be in that list, like as one of the top guys.
Yeah, totally.
And I know he would get playing time somewhere else, and I'm curious to know how well he performs somewhere else. I think he kind of maybe needs a new scenery right now, and kind of getting him back into the groove of things with his football. But I think he's shown why he can play, but why he shouldn't play at the same time, if that makes sense. Because he's shown that he can play. He's shown that he can give some great dives.
Totally.
But
let's talk about that, right? Like you said, he might need a change of scenery. We've seen some links. We've seen some rumors. He wants to maybe go to Germany, La Liga, Serie A, pretty much anywhere but the Premier League, right? He doesn't want to go to another Premier League team. Probably, I wonder if that has a lot to do with how tough it is to make it in the Premier League, and it's nothing against Tanguy. I totally think he can make it, but it requires that next level of effort and stuff. So let's talk about one of the biggest links. I saw one link with Tolisso, but it wasn't a great account, so I'm not going to really say anything to that. But I've seen a lot of people tweeting and talking a lot about Weston McKennie. So this might be really exciting for me and you and our other American fans, because Weston McKennie is one of our bright stars on the U.S. men's national team. And
you tell me right now, we do Weston McKennie swap, I'm all over that.
Weston McKennie is my favorite U.S. player right now. And to do a swap like that with Juventus, there's a couple things you got to look at. What does Juventus see in Tanguy that we're maybe not seeing? You know what I mean? And why are they willing to get rid of Weston McKennie for Tanguy? You know, so you guys take a step back, like, all right, hold up. If they're willing to get rid of this great young talent, Weston McKennie, for Tanguy, what do we really want to make that trade? Or, you know, what's the deal there? Is it even a good deal? So that's one thing you have to look at. Second thing you'll look at is, well, Weston McKennie went to Juventus when Paratici was still there, right? So I wonder if Paratici is this big part of why Weston McKennie may now be looking at coming to Spurs in that Tanguy swap. So maybe it's not even with Juventus, but Juventus are like, okay, we'll do this deal. It's Paratici, you know? He sees that highly of Weston McKennie. So what do you think of this swap? Would you take Weston McKennie?
Yes.
You're
talking about someone with work rate? Oh, baby, give me him now. You, despite the fact that he's also U.S., you know, you can't go wrong with that. I think you also should look into the fact that U.S. now has made a mark for themselves this past summer, being a top 10 nation in soccer,
winning 2 trophies too.
Winning 2 trophies with the Gold Cup, and then now in the Olympics, winning gold in that. And Weston was part of one of those teams. But
we did not win gold. First of all, we did not win gold in the Olympics. We didn't even qualify for the Olympics. It was the CONCACAF and the Gold
Cup. That's what I meant. Thank you.
Yeah,
my bad.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. My bad.
Yeah, you're good. I just want to clear it up.
No, you're right. No, the one thing though I love about Weston is just his work rate is amazing, and he's so up and down the pitch. And if you see his highlights at all with Juventus, him in the Champions League and just in the regular Serie A, being a midfielder who didn't really get that big of a start when he came from Schalke, because he was on a loan spell. Then they eventually said, we're just going to buy you, and which they did. He had 5 goals and 4 assists in the season of him not playing much, but being a midfielder like him. I mean, I think 5 goals and 4 assists is phenomenal.
He's not necessarily like a scoring midfielder,
No, but some of his goals were filthy, absolutely filthy. I mean, he had a good one against, I want to say it was Barcelona, but maybe not. Anyways, that's just besides the point. Point here, for me at least, is I think Weston has a lot to prove and a lot to produce. And I do think he could flourish in the Prim due to his mentality, his physicality, and how fast-paced Premier League soccer is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. Don't get me wrong. I'll be the first to critique the U.S. men's national team, but there's one thing that I think we do a good job at is to instill the hard work rates in our players. You look at Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Josh Sargent now, people that are all over Europe now. They never fail to work hard, and that's, I think, kind of just one of those inherent traits of these U.S. players. And Weston McKennie could flourish in the Premier League. You look at Clint Dempsey, Brad Friedel, Yedlin had a soft spot. Cameron Carter-Vickers is technically a U.S. player.
Yeah.
So Tottenham has had a good sort of connection with those U.S. players, and I'd really, really love to see him come to Spurs and kind of just be that next generation of Americans in the Premier League. You look at Josh Sargent now in Norwich. Pulisic paved the way for everyone with Chelsea now, and I'd love for Weston McKennie to join Spurs and help, and Tottenham be a part of that. It's a win-win. Tottenham can be a part of that, renaissance for Spurs and American players, but also, we get a good player out of it. So let's move on to Pape Sarr. As much as we want to talk about Weston McKennie all day, I'd do it, but let's move on. Pape Sarr. So an 18-year-old midfielder from FC Metz. This news has come up in the last couple of days, kind of like Paratici does. He works behind the scenes and he gets those deals done without us even knowing. So what do you think, Matt? We've kind of touched on this a lot. So this might be short, but
he seems like a very promising young midfielder. I think because I saw on an article saying that he might sign like a 6-year deal, and he might have a release clause like 130 million, which is an absurd amount of money because they must think he has some talent. But it's to me, it seemed like it was going to be like a $20 million deal, $15 million deal with bonuses or something like that, which isn't a terribly amount of money. But for a 20-year-old, I mean, if you look at Brian Hill, I mean, he was what, 25 plus Lamella. So who knows, his valuation is, that accurate. I'm sure it is, but um, I am definitely excited to see what he will offer, because I think if we do sign him, which it seems to be that way, I don't think he's going to come right away. I think the deal was to have him on loan, or Mets was just be like, hey, can we loan him for one more year and then you guys can have him? Is to me what it looked like. Even if he doesn't go on loan and he does come, I will not be surprised if he gets a decent amount of playing time, especially in the Conference League if we do stay in that. I think he can produce in the Prem, especially with how fast-paced and physical it is. Don't get me wrong, Liga is a league that, maybe not the best teams playing it, but I will say that he seems like a promising young player. He also seems very freaking tall for a midfielder, but being 18 and having that big of a evaluation, and also having a contract that apparently has a release clause of that much, or like 130 million, seems pretty promising to me. Again, I'm not gonna lie, I know a lot of young players out there, and I have not heard of this guy before. So I had to do some research in terms of who he is and whatnot. And there was some stuff I could find, but that's back to another point I made, how we're digging deep ever since Patrici came over here, how we're digging deep into all these young guys. And
I mean,
that proves it just proves my point even more, because if you look at Chelsea and all the guys that came from their youth academy and that currently play now, Reece James is a great example. Mason Mount is a great example. These guys were almost nobodies 2 years ago, and now they're, world-class players.
Totally.
And so, it's almost like you want to not force, but kind of like show and put these young guys in Premier League football early, because they know that if you can play Premier League football, then you can go play somewhere else. You can play anywhere else. I do think it's tougher that if you play somewhere else, you can't necessarily play Premier League football. If you see what I'm saying? Totally. I think it's that much harder of a league. I think it's the hardest league. So I think when you have these young guys, and you put them on, these top clubs, and they produce in the Prem, then, that makes them that much more valuable when they go, on the play somewhere else. I'm very curious to know what Nuno thinks of Pape Sarr. Obviously, they like him, they want him, because he's looking to sign for him. But I'm curious to know what. Go ahead.
Well, okay, I kind of have an interesting thought, and I just thought as you were talking, and we're investing in young creative players. You look at Brian Hill, Pape Sarr. We already have Lo Celso, potentially Weston, McKennie. So this is very interesting to me, because you look at it and kind of first thought is, okay, who is this guy, right? Like you said, we know a lot of young players. We're pretty well versed in that realm, but this is a kind of a newer name, and we had to do some research on him. But after that research, he looks to be promising, and obviously there's something about him that Partici, Nuno, Levy, they all like. And I wonder if it's kind of like, let's get these young guys in to kind of build this foundation. Like you said, not only are we getting them used to it at an early age, getting them used to this Premier League side, Premier League training even, with players that are going to train as hard as they will play in that weekend's game against other Prem sides. And then you can get like some of those midfielders that we're trying to move out or trying to phase away from the squad, like maybe Sissoko, Harry Winks, even, those types of players that we don't want necessarily to be options. We want creative, positive attacking players to be options, right? And, I hate to pull Harry Winks into that, but it seems like that's kind of where his direction at the club is going, right? And he wants to stay and fight. Okay, I guess we'll let that happen, but we're not going to stop from bringing in players that we think might be able to make an impact either right away or, in a year, couple years. So I'm with you. I don't have anything against the signing. Don't really know much about him. To me at this point, like the more the merrier. Why not bring him in if we can afford it, if we can do it? It's not like we're going to get that big name right now. We're in the middle of a rebuild. I think people got to realize that we got to kind of accept what we're getting and make the best of it. So I think that's why I also think Weston McKennie would be a great signing right at this point. You got to want players that want to be a part of this project, that can flourish, that can grow into Sons, Harry Kane's, stuff like that, and see what happens. So I'd be happy with that. Think we move on to the Wolves game?
What?
Think we should move on to the Wolves game?
Yeah, let's talk about the Wolves game.
Okay. Alrighty. Wolves, let's talk about our starting 11. Exact same starting 11 as Man City.
Exact same starting 11.
Was apparently Romero hurt his knee or something. He has a slight injury, so he wasn't even featured in the subs. So that was the only change I might have seen was Romero for either Sanchez or Dyer. But we didn't. Saw the same exact squad. Started off, to me, really slow. Really, really slow. And great work from Dele to draw that PK, which was a PK, by the way. And convert it, Dele's got to be that leader on the pitch. He wants to do that. And like you said, his defensive work rate has impressed me so much. And Nuno, he said in the post-match press conference. So I'm really happy with Dele and what he's doing right now and the way he's taking control of this new role he has. He's not the man. It's almost similar to Tanguy when Dele was coming up after we bought him. I mean, he was unreal. He was the talk of the town. Anywhere on this planet, you talked about Dele Alli and you were into soccer, into football, you knew who he was. But he had a rough spell and he had to push through that and find a way to limit that, entitlement maybe a little bit. And now he's
I
a
think
squad
what motivated
player.
him a little bit too is the fact that he dates Pep's daughter.
Exactly. So what are your thoughts on the game overall?
Honestly, excuse me. I was slightly disappointed, but at the same time, happy with the win. 3 points, clean sheet.
That's important.
Major accomplishments, I'd say, to a game that could be very chippy, very rocky, just rough and just hard fought. Luckily enough, we did get a pen and converted it, and it was a pen. I mean, in the story. But I would give Dele credit to that. I think we should give Reguilon some credit to that because of our ability to counter in that situation. I didn't think we played as well as we did against City. I didn't think we were as fluid. I thought our defense was very, very rocky, especially with Sanchez and Dyer. I just thought too many times Dama was getting in too easily. He was beating Tanganga too much. He was beating Sanchez a little too much, to where he was a problem for our back line, and we ended up handling it well. Well, heck, I don't even know if you consider that handling well or just saying we got lucky enough that Wolves didn't attack the greatest to really cause damage.
I want to talk about that because Traore was probably their most threatening player next to Jimenez, in my opinion. Trincao also played well on the right, but I thought our defense, so you look at this game, going into this game, it was never going to be easy, right? Wolves are fired up. They're at home. They lost their first game. They want to win. They need to win. It's against Tottenham. It's against their old manager. There's Nuno, and it's, Nuno's coming back to his place. He's got something to prove. He spent all this time at Wolves building up their foundation, and, he gets sacked. There's a lot going on here, and this is never going to be an easy game. Never. So first things first, we got 3 points. We fought through it. That's huge. But you look at our defense. I was actually, it wasn't the best performance like it was against City, but you look at things when things get chaotic, you got to find a way to solve problems and you got to fix it. And I thought our players did pretty well at that. Traore was on today. He was really good. He maybe didn't have the last service, but people say we got lucky, but I think we just defended well. We were composed. We weren't diving in towards the end when typically we'd dive in, cause a PK, something like that would happen, like we might have done last year where they'd get a chance at goal. But the team was kind of composed and we gutted it out in a way. It's like, you know what, we're not on it today. I'm not sure what's going on, but we're not going to let them get that many chances. And the only really chance they had, their one clear chance where they should have scored, was Traore's 1-on-1 with Hugo, which incredible save, by the way. If anyone thinks that Hugo's not world class still and not one of the best keepers in the world still, they gotta let him in. It's absurd. But anyway, I was not as displeased with our defense as everyone else was, because we didn't let in a goal late like we used to. We didn't let it in. We got another clean sheet against a tough team and a team that, frankly, was having the best of us, right? And
Are you satisfied though with a 1-0 win?
Well, I'm not saying we played well and I'm satisfied, but I just want to kind of look at that lens of like, Spurs held it out. We held out the win. We not only held out the win, it's not like Hugo had to come up with 10 incredible saves and we got lucky, you know? We shut them down. Yes, they got into the final third, but they didn't get that last pass. They weren't able to get that last shot. We kind of shut them out of that. So that was positive to me.
I don't want you to think, or anyone to think that, I'm not satisfied with us not winning by more than one goal. I mean, any 3 points.
I mean, frankly, I'm not either. I mean, we should have put maybe a couple more away here and there.
And it's just, I think we've been in so many positions, especially in the past. We go up 1-0 and then we concede in the 80th minute or whatever it is. And then we end up drawing. And it's so critical to have those 2 extra points instead of 1 point in the Prem, because we've seen it in the past. It comes out of the final game and we're 2 points here, 1 point here, and those points has come from the last 10 minutes of game X, and Wolves could have been that game. It's so critical, yes, to score the more than one goal to really seal something. But I think we did show out that we closed out the game, which was hype. But
yeah,
I really think.
Go ahead. I think it's important to note. Go ahead.
You're fine. You're fine. Go for it, Clay.
I think it's important to note that yes, we gutted it out, and I don't want to roll into this where we have to gut it out. I like the momentum that we had last week, and like you said, I think Paco's Ferreira kind of dampened that momentum a little bit, and we didn't have as much confidence or momentum going into this game, because we did lose in the midweek, and everything kind of is going on in your head at that point. But it wasn't like I didn't have the exact same feeling as last year, because we did keep fighting to the end. We subbed on attacking players. We weren't 1-0 up and subbing on Sissoko. Yes, we subbed on Winks, but we also subbed on Lo Celso and Harry Kane. That's huge to me. That is such a good sign, because there's still positivity and there's still hope
it shows to score. That we're still trying to attack.
Right.
And we're not trying to close out the game by just sitting back, which is not Tottenham's way. We're not a team to be like, okay, we're up 1-0, let's just go sit back now for the next 20 minutes. I love how Nuno's like, no, we're going to go close this game out. We're going to go get another one.
And it wasn't like Nuno was like, maybe that's how the game kind of played out a couple of times, was Wolves had the better of the attacks for 20-minute spells even, but Nuno was like, this is not how we want to play. So what is he doing? He's not reinforcing the defense. He's subbing on attacking players to try and get that up. And I honestly think at the end, especially with Bergwijn, he had some really great attacks, and we could have had one or two more chances here and there. So I'm not really upset with that game. But 1-0 win, clean sheet, 3 points, not much to complain about really. So we'll see. Next week will be interesting, especially against a team like Watford, where I think a Watford has to be number 1, a clean sheet, and number 2, a 2-3 goal win.
They're going to come out strong though, I think.
No, they definitely will, but definitely a 2-3 goal win for sure. All right. Last little thing, we'll make this quick, was I wanted to note that the fans received Harry Kane with a lot of praise, and they were singing he's one of our own. So I'll be really curious to see what goes on with Harry Kane. Great episode here, Matt. Also, keep in mind, this is a great debate week. So the great debate is going to be coming out on Friday. And our topic this week is, should Harry Kane stay or go? What's our feeling is on Harry Kane? It's coming to that time. Hopefully there might be a decision by the time the episode comes out, but we'll see. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to check us out on Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. And as always, come on, you Spurs.